Hello, welcome to our Sunday service for May 22nd, 2022. We begin service with ringing of kansho, followed by sutra chanting of Juseige. Then the Dharma School 5th and 6th grade class will lead reading of the Eightfold Path. Then there'll be a Dharma Message, and then we'll close our service. Thank you for joining us today.
And now the fifth and sixth grade class will read the Eightfold Path.
The Buddha Dharma is a realization within one's deepest consciousness of oneness of life. For the attainment of this purpose, the Buddha left us to follow the Eightfold Path, which is the way of prime importance.
Right view, to keep ourselves free from prejudice, superstition, and delusion, and to see the true nature of life as it is.
Right thoughts, to turn away from the evils of the world and direct our minds towards purity.
Right speech, to refrain from pointlessness and harmful talk and speak kindly and courteously to all.
Right conduct, to see that our deeds are peaceful, benevolent, compassionate, and pure, to live the teachings daily.
Right livelihood, to earn our living in such a way as to entail no evil consequences.
Right effort, to direct our efforts incessantly to the overcoming of ignorance and craving desire.
Right mindfulness, to cherish good and pure thoughts, for all that we say and do arise from our thoughts.
Right meditation, to concentrate our will on the Buddha, his life, and his teachings.
May the presence of the Buddha, who said that he would abide in the Dharma, be our guide. May we with earnestness, gratitude, and unfaltering steps tread upon this noble Eightfold Path until we too shall attain enlightenment.
Please join us in kansho. Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Shakyamuni taught that there would be both people who entrust themselves to this teaching and people who abuse it. By the fact that I have entrusted myself fully to it, and there are others who abuse it, I realize that the Buddha's words are indeed true. Hence, I realize all the more clearly that my birth is indeed firmly settled. If there were none who abused the teaching, then surely we would wonder why there are those who entrust but none who abuse it. This is not to say the Nembutsu necessarily must be slandered. I merely speak of the fact that the Buddha, knowing beforehand that there would be both those who trust and those who slander, taught this so people would have no doubts. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandabs. 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 Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our service today, either in our Sunday morning Zoom watch party or by viewing this on our YouTube channel. Today's opening reading is a quote from Shinran Shonin, the founder of our Jodo Shinshu tradition, cited by Yuenbo, a disciple of Shinran's who wrote the Tani Sho. This chapter from the Tani Sho that this passage comes from is addressing the assertion that for practicers who do not read the sutras and commentaries and engage in study, birth is not settled. This was a common criticism of Pure Land Buddhism from other sects that teach the difficult path or the path of sages. Shinran did not deny or criticize other teachings, but used himself as an example of someone who found the difficult path to be beyond his capability to follow. Shinran must have felt a great deal of anxiety when he was studying on Mount Hiei, because though he tried as hard as he could, he cannot find the path to end suffering. We've all felt similar anxiety when trying to learn something new. I really believe something like playing the guitar or playing golf. We feel anxious at first because no matter how hard we're practicing, there's that point where we just feel like we're not improving. Often these feelings of anxiety become really overwhelming and change to frustration or anger. And then sometimes we just give up. It's probably a very rare person who's not given up on learning at least one or two things in their life. Even Shinran gave up the studying of the difficult path on Mount Hiei. However, by leaving Mount Hiei, Shinran was able to find Honen Shonin and learn about the Nembutsu path, or as we sometimes refer to it as easy path. No one knows what Shinran's plans were when he left Mount Hiei, but it's evident that he planned to continue his search for a way to end suffering. And perhaps his anxiety led him to come up with a new plan on how to do his search. I recently read an article written by Dr. Tracy Dennis-Tiwari. She's a professor of psychology at Hunter College, which is part of the City University of New York system. She wrote that currently anxiety is often considered a dangerous affliction with the kind of medical solution to eliminate it. Her view, though, in this article she wrote, is that it's changing from the idea that feeling anxiety itself is the problem to the real problem being not understanding how to respond constructively to anxiety. Trying to see anxiety for what it truly is to see that the bad feelings associated with anxiety, they're not something wrong with our mental health, but maybe even a result of human evolution. It's a response that tells us to think about the uncertain future and prepare for it. Dr. Dennis Tiwari's term for this anxiety is that it places it in the, and she uses quotes, future tense. And she uses quotes because it's the title of a book she wrote, but it's also a pun to kind of indicate that right now your anxiety is about the future, because all anxiety is about future, and it makes you tense. So hence future tense. The future tense is where she feels we're motivated to survive and thrive by being more persistent, hopeful, and innovative. Treating anxiety as a disease prevents us from separating normal, healthy anxiety from anxiety disorders, which she says are real. And those are when a person's way of handling anxiety amplifies it out of proportion to the situation. So while I was going through writing this Dharma message, I went to Reverend Mukujima, as I always do, and he reminded me of an important lesson about Buddhism, and that there is the Buddhism of elimination and the Buddhism of transformation. So in Buddhism, there's different ways of thinking about Buddhism. Now, elimination means one must make their own efforts to extinguish all of the evil nature or blind passions, greed, anger, and ignorance, to end your suffering. Transformation means to transform our delusional minds to see things as they really are to end suffering. And this is the Nembutsu teaching that tells us to entrust in Amida's wisdom and compassion, because we cannot truly rid ourselves of our own evil with our own efforts. Sensei once gave a Dharma message about his time at Seabrook when they were cleaning out a pond that's on the Seabrook temple grounds. And he talked about the lotus and the fact that it grows in the mud because there were lotus in the pond at Seabrook. The lotus is an example of Buddhism of transformation. Even though the lotus is born and lives in muddy water, it accepts this reality and produces a beautiful flower. The mud is essential to the lotus because it cannot bloom in clear spring water. The mud is like our anxiety. Though it's, distasteful and dirty, we think we want to remove it. But the reality is that it shouldn't be removed. Without the mud of our anxiety, going back to Dr. Dennis Tuwari's article, she infers that a very healthy part of our motivation to survive and thrive would be removed. There's a Mahayana saying in Japanese, it's bon no soku bodai, or blind passions are enlightenment. This is a teaching that tells us our blind passions, they're not an independent or opposing thing from enlightenment. In other words, elimination of one thing is not needed for the other thing to exist. This is the reality of the world that we must try to see. We don't need to eliminate the blind passions for enlightenment. It's all coexist and interconnected. Just like don't eliminate your anxieties, but realize they are part of what makes us a persistent, hopeful, and innovative person. To me, when we feel anxiety about our teachings and then trusting in Amida's primal vow, it's really coming from our doubting minds, and our doubting minds limit our ability to fully understand the inconceivable wisdom and compassion of the primal vow. And if we start to really think about it, sometimes that doubt starts to create anxiety. And sometimes that anxiety can lead people to say, oh, I need to find another way, just like Shinran did. But this way could then lead people to the difficult path, which relies heavily on self-power towards leading to an end to suffering. A lot of the current trends towards mindfulness or meditative thought, or those things which are more in the difficult path of sections or types of Buddhism, those are the things that if you're frustrated and anxious about being freed from suffering through the Pure Land teaching, through the primal vow that was made by Amida with his inconceivable wisdom and compassion, you could end up there. This in turn can lead to more anxiety when people realize they can't overcome those limitations they have as a human. And just like Shinran realized, and he descended from Mount Hiei as a result. Now, an example I'll give is that sometimes the difficult path doesn't mean that you go follow a different school of Buddhism. You don't go to a Zen meditation. Sometimes the difficult path forms in your own mind, and it's because you're trying to understand the Nembutsu teachings through academic study only. And I am citing this because I fell into this pit, this difficult path within the easy path for a long time. I thought that if I would study, and the more I would study, I would eventually come to understand better Nembutsu. Like I said, it put me, instead of helping me understand, it put me on a difficult path. And I got this growing anxiety about not understanding academically how Nembutsu path works. My mind kept going around in a circle thinking, oh, but why isn't studying helping me better understand the inconceivable wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha's primal vow? So it just kind of kept going and going until I realized that, okay, this is not the intent of Nembutsu teaching. So a little bit of anxiety went away, and I hope slowly my anxiety about not being sure about my birth in the Pure Land can keep reducing a little bit at a time. the future tense I have about my birth in the Pure Land will help me prepare by being more hopeful about the assurance of Amida's vow, to be more persistent and innovative, to listen carefully to the Dharma, make sure I have clear Dharma ears, and to interconnect with the Sangha, and not just our Sangha, but the worldwide Sangha, in accordance with the Dharma. In closing, I'd ask us all to try and embrace and appreciate our anxiety about birth in the Pure Land. And we should reflect on these words from chapter 12 of Tanisho that were written by Yuan Bo. I feel that these words can help us channel our anxiety into right thoughts and efforts to lead us to awakening to the inconceivable power of Amida's primal vow. So if you please join me in Gassho. If one studies more and more, one realizes Amida's fundamental intent and grows in awareness of the immensity of the compassionate vow, so that one can explain to those who anxiously wonder how birth is possible for the wretched people like themselves, that the primal vow does not discriminate as to whether one's mind is good or evil, pure or defiled. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda. Thank you again for joining us. And as always, please stay healthy and stay safe.